Hi everyone, I'm Sean.
And I'm Nicholas. We're instructors with the Grylls Survival Academy. Today we are here in Cowdray Park in Midhurst. We're going to be showing you some survival skills you may have seen Bear doing on the TV before. We're going to be going into a little bit of detail with them, showing you some skills that may one day save your life.
Survival can be challenging, so make sure you make every second count and remember to never give up. The first lesson we have for you guys out there is Bear's priorities of survival and the rules of three. So follow me. So the first lesson is Bear's priorities of survival. Bear works on a please remember what's first. P being for protection. Protection from the elements, protection from the weather, protection from everything around you to make sure you're safe in a survival situation. Rescue, making yourself visible, making yourself out there so that if anyone's looking for you, they will be able to find you. The next one is water. Keeping yourself hydrated is very important in a survival situation because you've got to be motivated to move forward, making every second count. So food's very important in a survival situation, and Bear talks a lot about that. You need the calories in your body to move forward, keep yourself dynamic, and find yourself rescue. Rescue is out there, it's up to you, so never give up. And now I'm going to move on to the rules of three. The reason why Bear has the priorities of survival is because the rules of three adjoin to each one. The first one being 3 minutes. 3 minutes without oxygen. Next one, 3 hours. 3 hours from the elements. Be it hot, be it cold, it's the elements, you have 3 hours. 3 days without hydration, so without water, 3 days. 3 weeks without food. Very important to remember, they all go with Bear's priority of survival. Please remember what's first. Remember, survival can be tough. Every second counts, and remember to never give up.
Going off of Bear's priorities of survival, the first thing we need to think about is our protection. And a key element of that protection is shelter. Now we can spend all day building a really big shelter that's really pretty, but that takes a lot of energy and a lot of time. And in a survival situation, every second counts. So we need to think about the functionality of our shelter. What do we need it for? Well, usually it's to escape harsh weather, or it's just to get some rest. The location of our shelter, we need to start thinking about that. We want to be quite close to a water source, but not too close. You find that there's much higher concentrations of biting insects and mosquitoes about 100 to 200 meters away. So in torrential rain, those rivers can actually burst their banks. So we want to make sure we're also uphill from that water source. Also, that high ground is going to give us other benefits as well. We'll be able to see rescue coming at us, they'll be able to see us. And if we're self-rescuing, we'll be able to see a clear line of sight for where we're headed. Also, low valleys are more susceptible to damp, frost, and much lower temperatures. Once we've found a prime location for our shelter, we want to start thinking about positioning. One key tip is to face the entrance of your shelter away from the wind. Main reasons for this being, if you've got a fire outside your shelter, all that smoke doesn't blow directly in, and also if you're escaping harsh weather, that doesn't get blown in as well. If you're making a shelter in woodlands such as these, make sure you have a look up where you're building your shelter. What you're looking for is deadfall, any big heavy logs that in high winds could fall, cause some serious damage or worse. There are loads of different shelters we could go over, but in the spirit of keeping things simple and dynamic, I'm going to show you a classic A-frame. Probably my go-to shelter. It's very hard to get wrong, very quick and easy to make. As long as you've got a sturdy structure underneath all your foliage, you could just keep piling stuff on top of it, and the more you pile on, the more weatherproof and the more warm it's going to be for you during the night. So we're looking for a location. What we've got over here is a pretty good spot, I think. We've got a nice Y in the tree here for our central strut, no deadfall above us, nice flat ground underneath, so I think this could be a good spot. Now, one mistake I see people making time and time again is they don't measure their shelter beforehand, so they end up with their feet sticking out one end or their head sticking out the other end, or in a group situation, not everyone can fit into that shelter, which is a bit of a nightmare. So one thing you need to do before you build a shelter, once you've found your spot, is lay down on the floor like this. okay? And just mark out where your feet are, okay? And then you can jump up and you know exactly how big your shelter needs to be and exactly where you're gonna build it as well. So the most important element of our A-frame shelter is gonna be our central strut. And this feels like a nice, strong branch for the central strut. It needs to be long enough, obviously, to just overshoot our marker. Because remember, our feet are gonna be sticking up, so we wanna leave enough room for that. And we want it to be nicely wedged into our Y shape up there. It's a nice snug fit. There's gonna be a lot of weight on this, so you really wanna stress test it as well and make sure that's not gonna snap under the weight of the foliage and things that are gonna be popping on top of there. Okay, once you've got that in there, what we wanna be doing is finding some other branches. And we're literally just gonna be stacking these along to build our shelter. So longer ones up the top. And like I say, you can make this really pretty. You can spend all day doing it, but it literally just needs to be able to cover you. And all this is gonna do is hold up your foliage. Once you've got the bare bones of your shelter sorted, you wanna start thinking about waterproofing and weatherproofing it. In deciduous forests like these, all these leaves are perfect. Literally, all you're gonna be doing is grabbing big piles, start at the bottom of your shelter, and just piling it on top. Doesn't matter if there's sticks in there, whatever, just pile it on top. Like I say, it doesn't need to look pretty, it just needs to be functional. It needs to keep you warm and dry. So as we're chucking all this foliage on the top, you may see that it's falling through the gaps and falling onto the floor in your shelter. That's actually pretty good. We lose more heat through the floor than we do on the roof in our shelter. So we want to make sure that we've got loads and loads of bedding in there for a nice, comfy and warm night's sleep. So when we're building our shelter, it can sometimes be quite hard to see where the gaps are from the outside. But if you come inside, you can see where the light's coming in. That's where we want to put loads of the foliage on top. So we want to keep on at those areas until it's completely dark in here. Then we know it's completely weatherproof and it's going to be nice and warm. So if it's really coming down, it's really raining hard, what you can do is get live leaves and lay them in a bit more of a tiled formation on top. And what that will serve to do is just filter and funnel that rain off the top. Better still than that is if you've got one of these survival blanket. I'm going to get this out of the pack, unfold it, and these are huge, such a small packet. And you can lay these over the top, like so. And not only is that going to keep the rain off you, it'll also be super visible from the air. So anyone trying to rescue you is going to see that from miles off. Also, to best utilize this piece of kit, if it is raining, you'll create a funnel on one side, so all that water coming down can come down to one point and into a water collection vessel. So you're also addressing your water priority of survival. If you're not going to use that survival blanket on the outside of your shelter, you can bring it in with you, wrap it around yourself, and it's going to keep you nice and warm during the night. Where we are right now, the main thing I need to protect myself from is the weather. But in different locations around the world, there's other things you need to protect yourself from and other things you've got to think about. Think to yourself, what do I need protection from? How can I make that happen? As Bear always says, improvise, adapt, and overcome.
This lesson we're about to do goes back to Bear's priority survival. Please remember what's first: protection, rescue, water, and food. And this lesson is fire. Fire is very important for all 4 areas of Bear's priority survival. So let's take a look how we do that. Okay, so preparation is very important. So making sure that you have everything dry and everything ready. Right, at the moment we've got a bit of moisture, so we don't want to take anything off of the ground. So we're keeping an eye up and making sure whatever we collect is not wet. So come through. Okay, so preparation. Preparation, as I always say, it's important, okay? What we don't want is anything wet or anything that is still alive, so any green wood. So I've looked around and I found this wood. It's off the ground. The way that we find out if it's dry or not is actually snapping it. If it snaps and it's brown, it's dry. Good to use for a fire. So there's 3 aspects of preparation: tinder, kindling, thick wood. Right, and the way we remember this is pencil lead thickness, pencil thickness, and thumb thickness. Okay, so those are the 3 preparation of tinder, kindling, and our ready to burn wood. So how we do it? There we've got pencil lead thickness. Now, prepping, when you feel like you've got enough, get more, because this could be the only time that you're able to light that fire. So, pencil head thickness, and then over here, we never waste any dry wood. So as you can see, taking it all off and making sure the neater your preparation is, the easier it'll be to light your fire. Right, so we've done all our preparation, as you can see in front of me. One thing I have also been doing is being resourceful. In survival, resourcefulness is important, and Bear talks a lot about that. So what I've done here is I've got my tinder, kindling, and my thicker wood when the fire is established. Down here, I've got myself some hay, I've got myself some fine wood dust, silver birch bark, fantastic when getting fires. Now remember, this could only be one time to light this fire, so it's important we do it right. So, preparation, as I keep saying, we're going to look at the area. The floor is quite wet, okay? We've had a bit of rain in the area. We're also under a canopy, which keeps things moist. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our area is clear of any unwanted stuff on the floor. And then the way we like to do it is, one of the parts of the triangle is oxygen. We want to get oxygen from underneath into the fire. So we're going to build a raft. The other reason for building a raft is to keep it off the ground, because the ground is moist. So what I've got here is stuff to build a raft. Now when we say a raft, it's basically keeping the fire off the ground, which makes the oxygen able to come underneath. So I've got my raft built, got my area cleaned, okay? The raft's off the ground, so I get oxygen around the whole fire. So I'm gonna run through a few things, just for interest's sake. Steel wool, 9-volt battery, a little bit of hay. As you can see, we've got a fire. Now that's with steel wool and 9-volt battery and a bit of dry grass. Gets you a flame. I'll just move that out the way. Carefully making sure that's out. Very important that we make sure that anything we have and anything we do with fire is under control. The way I'm going to show you today is by using hay and a little bit of cotton wool. And I'm going to put that down there, just like that. And I'm going to use a fire striker. Ferrous rod and a striker. Now it's very important, because it's your only time you can light this fire, make sure you practice a little bit before. Holding the striker still and pulling the ferrous rod back. By practicing that, you have the opportunity to make sure you have one turn to get this fire going. My preparations here, my tinder, my kindling and my thicker, I'm ready to light this fire. And as you can see, once I've got the flame, I'm going to be building this in a TP position. And remember, oxygen is important when building a fire, because this could be the only time. And as you can see, it's picking up. Allow it to burn, allow the flame to grow, and slowly start putting your dry wood. Remembering, TP is the best way. Now follow your flame. Very important you follow your flame. Now that we have a fire that's established, one of the things that we have to remember is rescue. Rescue is important. We're in a canopy of trees. We need to get some smoke above the canopy. And the best way to do that is put some green on the fire. Bearing in mind that you want as much oxygen as you can within that. So we're going to put on the fire all at once and keep blowing. As you can see, the amount of smoke green makes. So, smoke out of the top of the canopy, and we found rescue. We've been told people are on their way for us, so the first thing we do is make sure our fire is safe. We don't want to leave it alight. So what we do is we spread with our foot, and then we come down, bearing in mind your hands with the coals, so you don't want to get too close to it. Just build up a wall, and then we're going back to our feet, and that stops any burning. And all we're going to do is put the dirt, the wet mud on top of that. The more you put on, the better it is. So what we're going to do then is make sure our fire is completely out. As you can see, I've broken the fire down. I'm going to use some old unpurified water, if you have any old mucky water, just to make sure, as you can see, just going around, making sure all the embers are out and we can be prepared to move. So that is a fire lesson. Hope you enjoyed that. Remember, every second counts in survival, and never give up.
Bear's second priority of survival is rescue. This doesn't necessarily mean somebody's coming to get us. It may mean that we need to self-rescue. Running around in the wilderness without knowing where you're going could just serve to worsen your situation. So one key skill to have in your toolbox is to be able to naturally navigate. If you know where to look, there are a myriad of navigational clues all around us. So let's explore some of these methods for naturally navigating right now. Where possible, I like to use deciduous trees, freestanding deciduous trees that is, like this one behind me. It's a really, really clear example pointing south. If you can see on this side of the tree, all the branches are reaching over this way. And on this side, they're all reaching upwards. And if this was in bloom at the moment with leaves all over it, you'd see there's more leaves on this side than there are on that side. And that'll give us a bit of a clue as to which way it's facing. Now we know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, but it does so on a southern side of the sky. So it would make sense that plants, as we know, using phototropism, will naturally gravitate towards that side. They'll want to get as much sun exposure as possible. So if I'm a tree, all the branches on the southern side are going to reach out like this, all the branches on the northern side are going to reach up and over like this, and I'll be pointing in a southerly direction. Moss is something that we get asked about all the time, and it's not as simple as people think. Let's use this tree as an example. So the rule is moss grows on the north side because moss likes shade and it likes damp. But really with trees, there's a lot of damp down the bottom, so you should really disregard the bottom metre or so and really look up to the length of the tree. Now this is a really, really good example, but you should really only use freestanding trees such as this one. So as you can see on this side of the tree, there's a majority of moss. As we come around to this side, it's much more lichen and not as much moss. This is a really, really good example here of moss growing on the northern side of the tree and the more growth of the tree on the southern side. So one constant in the natural world is the path of the sun. Rises in the east, sets in the west, and does so on the southern sky in the northern hemisphere, in the northern side and the southern hemisphere. What we can do, as long as you've got an analog watch, is you can use the sun to naturally navigate and find your cardinal points, as long as it's got the correct time on it. So what you want to do is you want to find the hour hand on the watch and point that at the sun. Then what you want to do is bisect the line between the 12 o'clock and the hour hand. You cut that in half and that will point you south. This is accurate for the northern hemisphere. Now if you're in the southern hemisphere, what you need to do is you point the 12 o'clock at the sun, bisect the line between the hour hand and the 12 o'clock, and that's going to give you north. You have to take into account though daylight savings and other such time changes as well. But that's the watch method. It's a really, really quick and easy one to do, and you can keep doing it as you're on your self-rescue path. If you don't have the correct time, but you do have the sun shining, what you can do is use what we call the stick method. Now for this, what you want to do is grab yourself a nice long straight stick with a nice clean end on it. You jam that into the ground, like so, nice and straight in the ground. What that's going to do is that's going to cast a shadow down onto the floor. And you're going to find out, obviously the sun's not shining too much today, so I'm struggling for a bit of shadow, but you're going to find out where the end of that shadow lies, and you're going to mark that end with a stick, like so. And then you're going to wait for as long as you can really. Maybe you're going to wait for half an hour would be more accurate. and you're going to mark the end of the shadow again, because that shadow is going to move. It's either going to elongate or it's going to shorten, but it's definitely going to move along. Okay, so you mark that second point. And if you want to be really accurate, you wait another half an hour, another hour if you can, and mark a third stick. Okay. And what you've got is you'll find it has this nice straight line across here. And this will be our east-west line. The key thing to remember here is left is first. Okay, so your left foot goes where the first stick is, your right foot goes where the second stick is, and you'll be facing north, and that's in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, you just flip it, so you'll be facing south in this case. One thing to do now is lay this stick down. Okay, grab your stick, lay it down, and then you know where your east-west line is. You put this stick perpendicular to it, and it gives you, I know that in the northern hemisphere now, that's north, south, that's east, and that's west, okay? And if you are going off on a self-rescue journey and you think someone might be coming to look for you, one thing you can do is if I'm heading off north, I can leave a big arrow marker before I go. So there's just a few ways that we can naturally navigate out in the wild. That little bit of information could save you so much time on your self-rescue journey, and remember, every second counts.